Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm really proud of all of us for enduring the way we have endured this winter. Congratulations. My name is Kate Dernicker. I'm on the program committee for the Contemporary Writers Series. I'm excited to have you here this evening. Before I start, I want to just make sure that you have it on your calendars that Luis Alberto Urrea will be speaking for our final reading on April 15th. So please put that on your calendar, and we will kick off our next season in the fall with poet Greg Orr. And we're getting a really dynamite lineup together for next year as well. I'm going to read an introduction of our speaker tonight. And the following is something that happened to Debra Marquart as a teenager. She was in her room in the farmhouse where she grew up in Logan County, North Dakota. She was practicing her solo for choir. Quote, "My voice shaking the windows with its power," she writes in the prologue of her memoir, The Horizontal World, Growing Up Wild in the Middle of Nowhere. A must-read book, by the way. She was really letting it rip. "I was, quote, testing the limits of my voice," she said, when she heard another voice break through, screaming from downstairs. Her mother, a somewhat reluctant but committed farm wife, had been running between that barn and house, trying to do chores and make dinner at the same time. Marquart writes that she was, quote, settling the song gently to the ground when she heard this. "Don't sing in the house," my mother's voice was yelling. "Just stop singing in the house." How good it is to know then that Debra Marquart eventually took her singing elsewhere, and through the horizontal world we get to go with her. We grow up and even survive adolescence with her and her family, leave home, come back in 1996 for her father's funeral. It is a delightfully rendered, often difficult, often funny, sometimes poignant, but always interesting journey. I'm confident that after growing up wild in the middle of North Dakota, Debra can handle the weather we're having here in Western Michigan today. After a brief stint at college, she yielded to the urge to join a rock band. After some rowdy years, things calmed down. They had to. As she writes at the end of her chapter titled Great Falls, about the city in Montana and much more, quote, "One day the crazy burning girl in her will simply lose speed and altitude. She will fall heavily to the ground and break apart, extinguished by her own flames. One day she'll crash and burn, giving all of us a much-needed rest." What crashed and burned first, actually, was the Ryder truck carrying $60,000 worth of band equipment. No one was hurt, but the fire part is a theme I've noticed in Debra's life. It was the crash of the Ryder truck that brings her to us today. Ironically, it happened one county over from her own Logan County, although by then she had traveled far and wide as a singer. It was just outside Fargo, and the band was stalled out for a while trying to regroup. During that downtime is when Debra started to write, and she hasn't stopped. To make a long but interesting story short, Debra Marquart has, since the early 1980s, published 2 books of poems, a collection of short stories titled The Hunger Bone, Rock and Roll Stories, from her experience as a female road musician, and The Horizontal World, her memoir released in 2006 that has won many awards, not least being the 2007 PEN USA Creative Nonfiction Award for Literary Excellence. Her next book, due for release by New Rivers Press in 2015, is a poetry collection titled Small Buried Things. On her website, there's also a well-populated section for awards and honors. She has been nominated more than a few times for the Pushcart Prize, and she won that prestigious award in 2001 for her story, Things Not Seen in a Rearview Mirror, which now appears as a chapter in The Horizontal World. Last year, she was awarded the Walkmeister Award for Excellence from the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, the Normal Poetry Prize from the Normal School, the Paul Monach Poetry Award from Farmingdale State College in New York, and her work was shortlisted for the Manchester Poetry Prize in the UK. Narrative magazine selected one of her poems as a top 5 for last November's issue, and she's also won the Shelby Foote Nonfiction Prize from the Faulkner Society and a National Endowment for the Arts Prose Fellowship. back to the gypsy life that stalled out in Fargo in the wake of the truck fire for a moment. After that, Debra went back to college, graduated, and went on for not one but two master's degrees, a master's in liberal arts from Morehead State University in 1990, and an MA in creative writing from the Iowa State University. She also began to teach. Debra Marquart is on the faculty for the Stone Coast low residency MFA program at the University of Southern Maine. She has been a professor of English at Iowa State University since 1995 in the MFA program in creative writing and the environment. I had the distinct honor of being her student during a semester in Kalamazoo in 2009 when she was there for a distinguished visiting writer for the creative writing department at Western Michigan. I could easily understand why she has won many awards for her ability as a teacher. I know you're eager to hear Debra read, but first let me say one more thing. Debra Marquart is still singing. Her musical side has manifested historically in her band called The Bone People, in which she collaborated with two other musicians to fuse elements of rock, jazz, and rhythm and blues with poetry and storytelling. Lately, she has had to play the guitar for herself, and she'd like you to know she's a terrible guitar player. It's not true, really. But she's a fine teacher, a fine singer, and a very, very fine writer. It is my distinct pleasure to give you Debra Marquart.
What luck to have such wonderful friends. Thank you so much, Kate. It's just so nice to be able to come up here and spend a little time with you and to meet the faculty in the English department and other people from the university. Thank you so much for this series. And I'm absolutely blown away that there's anybody here. You guys, I feel like I should come around and shake everyone's hand individually and say thank you for coming out on this night. So I'll try to make it worth your while. I think I might start with poems. I have a new book of poetry coming out, as Kate said, Small Buried Things. And there's a big poem in the middle about the North Dakota oil boom. I'll save you the fracking poems, but I do have a little nonfiction piece I'll read in the middle about fracking. But maybe start with some poems from this new collection, and then read you some nonfiction as we go along. So, it's really kind of funny the way poems will sit sort of fallow for many years, and they're just sort of floating around in your notebook or floating around in the back of your head, and then one day all of a sudden you sit down to your desk and you think, oh, this is the thing I have to write today. So this is a poem I wrote in this last year about a kind of a family story that we had for many years about my sister, the sister who was just older than me. I grew up in sort of a big Catholic family in the middle of North Dakota, and she blew out the ceiling of my brother's bedroom with a shotgun one day. So, it was a little story we all told, and not around her, of course. So this is called Kablooey is the sound you hear. Kablooey is the sound you hear, then plaster falling, and the billow of gypsum after your sister blows a hole in the ceiling of your brother's bedroom with the shotgun he left loaded and resting on his dresser. It's Saturday, and the men are in the fields. You and your sister are cleaning house with your mother. Maybe your sister hates cleaning that much, or maybe she's just that thorough. But somehow she has lifted the gun to dust it or dust under it. You are busy mopping the stairs. And from the top landing where you stand, you turn toward the sound to see your sister cradling the smoking shotgun in her surprised arms, like a beauty queen clutching a bouquet of long-stemmed roses after being pronounced the official winner. Then the smell of burnt gunpowder reaches you, dirty orange and sulfurous, like spent fireworks. And through the veil of smoke, you see a hole smoldering above her head, a halo of perforations in the ceiling, the drywall blown clean through insulation to naked joists, that dark constellation where the buckshot spread. The look on your sister's face is pure shit-face shock. You'd like to stop and photograph it for blackmail or future family stories. But now you must focus on the face of your mother, frozen there at the base of the stairs where she has rushed from vacuuming or waxing, her frantic eyes searching your face for some clue about the extent of the catastrophe. But it's like that heavy quicksand dream where you can't move or speak. So your mother scrambles up the steps on all fours, rushes past you to the room where your sister has now just found her voice, already screaming her story. It just went off. It just went off. As if a shotgun left to rest on safety would rise and fire itself. All this will be hashed and rehashed at the supper table. But what stays with you all these years later, what you cannot forget, is that moment when your mother waited at the bottom of the steps for a word from you, one word, and all you could offer her was silence. It's kind of funny, the way poems, the way they turn out, and all these years later, that was the thing that I couldn't forgive myself for, was just that my poor mother had to live through that short period, that eternity of terror about what she would have seen as she'd come up the steps. Again, I know there are probably a lot of writers in this room, so maybe I'll just talk a little bit about where poems live and where they come from. But I went to the Des Moines Historical Society. The Iowa Historical Society. It's in Des Moines. I live in Ames, Iowa, which is just about 30 miles north of Des Moines. And they have all these, historical displays about agriculture in Iowa and various things, Iowa history. And they had this one exhibit, and it was from, I kind of explained it in the poem, but it was several shadow boxes, glass cases, and it was from a ear, nose, and throat doctor who practiced in Des Moines for several decades. And it was like everything he'd extracted out of people's throats. And he had it all kind of cataloged. And so I jotted down all the details, and then it sat in my notebook for, I think, maybe 15 years. And then one day I just thought, oh, this is a poem, So this is called Things Not to Put in Your Mouth. Medical Display, Iowa State Historical Museum, Des Moines, Iowa. A penny, a quarter, a button, a paper clip, safety pins closed and open, most ingested while changing diapers. In 2 shadow boxes, Dr. James Downing displayed the objects he'd extracted from patients' food and air passages between 1929 and 1956. A wishbone, a kernel of corn, over large, a pen nib, beads from a necklace with the string still attached, a nail, a screw, a cover from a bottle of Anacin. Thumbtacked in rows, suspended in glassine envelopes, the objects floated in glass cases, a warning about things not to put in your mouth. A toothpick, a rhinestone earring, a metal snap, a wadded up ball of paper, a long sewing needle, a cocklebur seed, spiky as a porcupine, a sardine can turnkey, many small chicken bones, things with sharp edges, cumbersome things that get caught in the throat, things that do not go down easy, things that go down hard and refuse to come up. A Daughters of the American Revolution pendant, a gold hinge from a jewelry box, a price tag marked 89 cents for item number 1025293 from the Yonkers department store. The exhibit includes the doctor's medical bag and his instruments of extraction, a tracheal dilator, a uvula dilator, laryngeal and esophageal forceps, with a humorous note jotted in a hospital report. Feed her anything but nickels and pennies, beside the very nickel extracted from the child's throat. It's kind of morbid, morbid little catalog of things. I feel compelled to read this poem, Lake Effect, because here I am in Grand Rapids. And my fiance lives in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and so I've spent part of the year over here, and so it seems like tonight is a perfect night to read this poem, Lake Effect. Lake Effect. Snow for days. Let it. The weather woman is always wrong. We rise these pearl-white mornings made warm by your long back, east of Lake Michigan. Unexpected, snow always coming. Great crystal flakes float outside your windows. White pine branches lowered heavy with snow. We rise to the meteorologist's apologies. This upland peninsula, so shaped like a paw or an oven mitt, people will raise their hands, a kind of swearing to, and point to the spot where they're from. This place, in the heart of the palm, where I found you. A bit left of center. Lake effect, people around here say to things that happen. All the things so wonderful or strange, they can never hope to predict or explain. I always like that phrase, lake effect. People will just say it to you randomly. Whenever you talk about the weather, people just, lake effect, you know. So now I'm going to gross out all the young people by reading this piece. Linda, we were talking earlier about a little lyric essay that I wrote that was in numbered sections, and I've been very interested in this idea of writing poems in small numbered sections, and it kind of goes back to 13 Ways of Looking at Wallace Stevens' 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird, and it's a really interesting way to get a lot of things into one piece of writing, because you can just write a little numbered, just a few lines, and you capture something, and you can go on to a whole different observation. So this, as it turns out, I apologize to all the young people in here, but it's about everything that I know about my whisker. I have this whisker. See, they're grossed out already. They're like, can't believe she's talking about her whisker. But it turns out I just knew so much about my whiskers. So this is called Whisker Meditations, and it's in 10 numbered sections. It'll be over quickly, I promise. Okay. Whisker Meditations. 1. When I told my fiance's mother about my persistent recurring whisker, lower right underside of my chin, she smiled sideways, said, "Be glad it's only one." 2. I was parked in the lot outside Bed Bath & Beyond with my then husband. I was applying lipstick in the mirror the first time I spotted it, my whisker enjoying a stretch of unchecked growth. It was hot in the car. We were laughing. My husband tried to pull it out with his fingertips. When that failed, he offered to tweeze it with his teeth. What an act of extreme devotion. It makes me wonder why I ever let him go. 3. It begins a smooth bump on the skin that you must worry for days with your fingertips. Then a small nub, slight friction in the follicle, nothing visible. Hours pass, days, you forget. Then one day you catch it in the silhouette or the sunlight. A long tendril, like a pliable scrap of piano wire, sprung from your chin. 4. My friend Jenny tells me about one night when she and Colin made love. Lying there, sweaty, happy, Colin spotted a long brown hair on Jenny's chest. His hair, he thought. When he tried to pick it off, the skin lifted, the follicle resisted. It was connected. "Get it off me!" Jenny screamed. "Get it off!" 5. This sliver of iron ore spun from the lava core of the earth, one thin chin wire rising through Cambrian, Devonian, up through continental shelves, bedrock, shale, topsoil. This tendril, manganese, copper, platinum, must have pierced my heel, threaded my first step, wound around tendons, up shin, thigh, groin, traveled through heart, breast, throat, to arrive here on my chin in my 40th year. 6. Sometimes in meetings at work, I catch myself stroking my sad whisker when contemplating problems. I better understand now the gestures of my bearded colleagues, who over the years have cradled their chins, stroked with the grain, against the grain, or, when really perplexed, vigorously scratched a stubbled cheek. 7. In the bathroom of a 4-star hotel, marble shower, terrazzo floors, I turn on the lighted magnifying mirror hanging near the vanity. Never mind crow's feet, enlarged pores, the natural exigencies of age. But oh, in the magnifying glass, under that terrifying light, constellations of age spots, catastrophe of eyebrows, oh, whisker. All the while, my fiancé is knocking on the frosted glass door. What are you doing in there? 8. And now my whisker has attracted an evil albino twin, emerging from the doorway of the neighboring pour. How long will it be before the rest of the family arrives? The older brother, the in-laws, and parents, not to mention the car full of California cousins. 9. To pluck it, you must stand by the window, blinds open in full light with a tweezer and a hand mirror. Try to tuck yourself behind the billow of the curtain. No need for you to star in a YouTube video entitled, "My Crazy Old Neighbor Lady Plucks Her Whisker Again." And 10. You'll never get it on the first try or the second. You have to poke around. Then one day, the tweezer's edge will land, small suction as the follicle releases. When it happens to me, I hold the whisker up in the light, say, "Got it, you bastard." Small moment of satisfaction followed by silence, vacuous air, contemplating the many hours and days, the many weeks it will take for this grave act to be undone. So that's it. I've thoroughly grossed you out now. I'm really sorry about it. So maybe I'll read a poem and then a couple more poems, and then I'll go on to this prose piece about the oil boom. But I think poems they germinate for a long time. And I was sitting down at my writing desk one day, and I had this memory. It came in an image, and it was I'm in my childhood home, which was a farmhouse in North Dakota. My mom and dad have gone to town for something. It's nighttime, and so I can see the reflection of the TV on my mother's immaculately polished wood floor. And my sisters are standing in a circle. I have 3 sisters. They're standing in a circle around my brother. My brother is hunkering down like this. And my sisters are standing around him like this, with their fists in the air. And it just was this flash of an image that came back. And I thought, oh my goodness, we must have beat my brother up when we were kids, 4 girls and 1 boy. And so this poem was written, I was horrified by this idea that he was such a nice kid and he turned out so great and such a wonderful brother, and I was kind of trying to figure out why on earth did we do this? So I wrote this poem called Beating Up the Brother, and I want to assure you that these were not like really serious beatings. They were the kind of sibling, skirmishes. And I later realized I don't think I was involved in them because I was at the doorway watching in my memory. But you'll hear this repeat, because, the word because, which is in poems is called an anaphora. It's a repeating phrase. Because literally when I wrote this in my journal, it was like because, I was trying to figure out why. I said why, and then I wrote because this, because that. So that's how the poem reads. Beating up the brother. Because he was a single stalk of sweet corn in a prairie of sisters. Because we girls were 7, 9, 11, and 12, and he was only 10, the middle one, the fulcrum our farm rested on. Because he was too cute and wore short pants, little hand in the cookie jar, little shrug and grin. Because his buzz cut felt like a freshly mowed lawn when we drove our hands over it. Because Mom and Dad left us alone some nights to watch the Ed Sullivan Show or the Miss America pageant. Because no beauty from North Dakota ever won or advanced to the final round of 10. Because we were a gaggle of girls expected to fly away, and he would stay to plow the land after we were gone. Because he was the only boy, sweet-natured and forgiving as Jesus under our fists. Because he was the brother, had that part we thought of as extra, that part we had never seen but knew existed. So that was kind of an interesting, revelation to put that whole thing together, to understand he was the boy, and I grew up in a farm family, and he was the one they were going to keep, and all of us girls were just going to have to figure out where we were going to go. So I'll read one more poem. For some reason, snow poems seem like the appropriate thing to read tonight. We used to have these fantastic storms in North Dakota where literally, like, the houses would get covered up with snow, and they'd have to just chop the doorways out so people could get in and out of houses. And in North Dakota anyway, I don't know if anyone ever saw people do this in Michigan or wherever you're from, but they would basically tie a rope to the house to the garage, or the house to the garage to the barn, to make sure that people would, be able to get and wouldn't get lost in the storm. And we used to do this when I was a kid during these storms. So I thought I like to think about putting things in poems that I've never seen in poems before. So I wrote this poem, and then my friend said, oh yeah, they had a whole episode of Little House on the Prairie about the blizzard rope. And I was like, okay. Little House on the Prairie got everything before I did. So, but this is called The Blizzard Rope. I have not forgotten, 10, and still holding the blizzard rope you tied around my waist. Winter of '66, you said, you are home base, and stepped out into weather. Snow like a house built around us, Holsteins holding their milk in the hungry barn. You had no choice. The straight path you walked every day, a mystery in this weather. I have not forgotten, 33 and holding the blizzard rope. White out, you step out, your fine hands climbing weather, your dark coat lost to the great white, your footsteps filling now with weather. The line has grown icy, Father. The weather worsens. I am home base. Go where you will. It's a little poem about blizzards. Just seemed appropriate. So I have this long essay I'm working on about the oil boom in North Dakota. I talked about it a bit today at the afternoon session. I was invited by Humanities Council of North Dakota to go up in November to travel around in the oil boom zone. Some of you may know, may not know, that they had the largest oil find in North American history there several years ago. It's called the Bakken Shale, and the estimates are that there are probably 40 billion barrels of oil down there. There's the Bakken Shale about 2 miles down, and then there's one underneath it called the Three Forks Formation. And so it probably looks like there's going to be an oil boom in that part of the world for about 40 years. And it's been going on for about 7 years, really intensifying in the last 5 years. A big population boom, lots of oil workers coming into the region. There's been a real rise in violent crime. The roads are not equipped to handle the kind of traffic that these are like big oil and water tankers. And so, imagine these are people who were living in these small towns of, say, we saw one town that had 7 people in it, and they're mostly little towns of about 200 or 300 people. And the big town that's in the middle of it is Williston, and I think it was maybe a 12,000, person town, and I think they've have maybe 5,000 people that have been added to their population, but nobody really knows how many people actually live in Williston. And there are these man camps where they basically are housing the oil workers in these sort of encampments of really, really ramshackle old RVs, or now they've actually built these kind of like tin. I write about that. I will read a little bit about it. So that's kind of the picture of this place. And there have been a lot of spills, and there have been a lot of, there was a pipeline break. Trains are sort of like blowing up. Things are blowing up basically every day. So this is called Welcome to Boomtown. This is a little sign in Williston, right by the downtown district. It says, "Welcome to Boomtown, North Dakota." Welcome to Boomtown. Things go boom on the Bakken daily. A minivan burns to cinders in the Walmart parking lot. Someone's living room, bedroom, kitchen. Someone's illegally and unwisely used propane heater. Temperatures hover at 15 below, and people are living in throwaway RVs held together by duct tape. There's nowhere to put all the people, and the arsonists aren't helping. A half-built apartment complex in Minot burns down 1 week. The next week, another half-built apartment complex burns down in Williston. Workers, and even sometimes their families, live in man camps, military rows of paper-thin aluminum storage pods the size of jail cells. A bed, a sink, a 5-step walking space. Meanwhile, back at Walmart, explosions of other kinds. A few years ago, Walmart decided to just put merchandise out on pallets. Mountains of women's pants, scattered piles of toys, bundles of Carhartt jackets, steel-toed boots are balanced against walls, thrown in corners. The pallets empty and fill, empty and fill. There's no one to hang things up, straighten, sort, put out displays. Walmart can't keep employees, and the goods just keep coming, along with the people sifting through the piles, looking for the things they need, the things to buy. The post office can't keep employees. Rents are too high and roads are too dangerous. In December, 6 postal workers in Williston walked off the job in 1 day. No one knows where anyone lives anyway. Forwarding addresses are only rumors. Even murders start as rumors. Last week, the police announced they were investigating a murder. They had no crime scene. They had no body. They just had the rumor of a murder. So they asked the public to keep an eye out. Sure enough, a day later, a body turned up under a bloody mattress in the ditch 13 miles east of Williston. Welcome to Boomtown. And the roads are dangerous, not only for little postal worker vehicles creeping along the shoulders. In one location on Highway 80, just south of Williston, a town of about 14,000 now, a traffic count was conducted a few years ago. In one 24-hour period, 29,000 vehicles went through the intersection, 60% of which were semi-trailer trucks. To run to the grocery store in your Civic Honda because you forgot to buy beans for your chili is to take your life into your hands. You must make careful lists. You must try not to forget anything because things go boom in the Bakken daily. The oil has been down there for millions of years, a worker named Sven told me, but suddenly we are all in such a hurry. A Facebook page titled Bakken Oil Field Fails of the Day records daily mishaps. Pictures of oil spurting in the air or recovered fracking water known as flowback on fire, shooting out of a rig. Pictures of overturned semis, water tankers, belly dump trucks in ditches. Any photo of a vehicle on its side in the ditch will cause someone on the Facebook page to write, "Sleepy, had to take a nap," or "That'll buff right out." A caterpillar being loaded off a platform slips a wheel on the ramp and it falls on its side. Under the picture, someone's written, "Must have been a woman driver." Women drivers and Southern drivers are the big topic of discussion in the Bakken, as are wind and weather. A picture of a trailer home blown onto its side has the caption, "Wind 1, trailer 0." Beside a photograph of several 20-foot tall water storage tanks blown over into a field like playthings, someone has written, "Do you know why North Dakota is so windy? Because Montana blows and Minnesota sucks." Driving through the Bakken at night is like moving through an enemy encampment. All around in the darkness are the pumping rigs, arms of oil rigs, or the tall, well-lit fracking towers, or refineries in the distance like small, bright cities. Beside each oil pad is a 4 to 5 foot plume of fire burning straight out of a pipe coming out of the ground. This practice, known as flaring, allows oil companies to burn off 30% of the natural gas that comes up to the surface, along with the shale oil that they mean to extract. No infrastructure yet exists in the region to collect the natural gas, and the practice of flaring, in addition to being wasteful, increases the amount of greenhouse gas emissions released into the atmosphere. How much waste is this? At present, oil companies are extracting around 1 million barrels of oil a day in the Bakken. And in one average month, 9.4 billion cubic feet of natural gas will be flared off into the atmosphere. One blogger, Jim Fugly, tried to do the math. He got out his Montana Dakota utilities bill to see how many cubic feet of natural gas it took to heat his home during the coldest month of the year. The number was 12,000 cubic feet of natural gas. By his calculations, the state could heat 780,000 homes a month with the natural gas that's being flared off. Ironically, just this week, a woman in Fort Yates froze to death inside her home on the Standing Rock Indian Reservation because the tribe is facing a shortage of propane to heat homes. The state legislatures don't seem interested in slowing the boom by forcing the infrastructure improvements to correct the imbalances, and none of these problems are going away. Conservative estimates are that there are between 20 to 40 billion barrels of extractable shale in the Bakken. The stories that involve children stay with you the longest. It's one thing to listen to Jim tell you about how he lost his job as a state archaeologist because of budget cuts in Kansas, and how he blew through his savings just trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for his daughter, who is now 9. They kept thinking something was bound to come through for Jim, and then his wife, Ida, lost her job too, and now their retirement money is gone. And it's hard enough to listen with averted eyes and murmur something about the downturn of the economy, which causes Jim to sneer at you a bit even as he hears you say it. Because Ida was the one who finally got the job teaching special ed in Williston, because they can't keep teachers in Boomtown either. So if there's a job for someone desperate enough to move there. And now Jim and Ida live in a small RV because rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is around $3,000. And Jim has to sleep over at his buddy's house at night so that Ida and their daughter can have a little privacy. Everyone on the Bakken has a story about children, it seems, and usually they're stories of separation, children being raised in Texas, in Montana, and Wyoming by someone else. Every time I talk to her, she says, "Daddy, when you coming home?" This one wildcatter tells me one night while we're sitting by the fireplace in the lobby of the hotel. He's just come back from the strip club, and he's very drunk. He's already told me how much he makes an hour, $48 an hour, $164,000 a year with overtime. He's told me how much he lost tonight at the blackjack table, $500. We've talked about his mother, his ex-wife, his wife, and his girlfriend. And now we are on to the subject of his daughter. She misses me, sure, he says, but she's going to have a great Christmas. The next day, a waitress tells me about one night when she was working and a man came in with 2 little kids. They were about 8 and 10. And the man was still in his muddy work clothes. It was about 11 o'clock at night, but he had some toys with him. They sat together in a booth and they played and they colored on the placemats. And when the waitress took their order, she smelled alcohol on the man really strong. She went back to the kitchen and tried to decide what to do. Should she call the police? Stay out of it, the older waitress said. No, the girl said. If something happens to those kids, I won't forgive myself. So she pulls the man aside and says, I smell alcohol on you, and I'm not going to let you leave the restaurant with those kids. Give me your keys. I'm not giving you my keys, the man says. Well, then I'm calling the cops, she said. Don't do that, he said. I drive for a living. I can't lose my license. And then he begins to tell her all about how his wife left him and he has no one to take care of the kids, so he has to keep them at the daycare for long hours. I can't lose my job, he says. I'm trying to make it work here. So she ran back to the kitchen and she thought, what would Mom do? And then she struck on this idea, to let the man go ahead in his car on his own, and she would follow behind in her car with his kids. And when they got to the man camp, the guy came over to her car to gather his kids, and he said to her, thank you. No one's ever done something like that for me. I promise you this won't happen again. But the waitress told me she doubts it. I just wish they would never have found that oil here, she said. I just wish they'd all go find oil somewhere else. I tell her how this oil has changed the national economy, how politicians are saying it's lessening our dependence on oil-rich rogue nations, all those places we've been going to fight wars for the last few decades. She looks at me like I'm addle-brained. They call it conflict-free oil, I say. It doesn't feel conflict-free to me, she says. So I'll stop there with that little essay. But, basically what I'm doing is I just go on Bakken oil field fail of the day every day, just look to see what blew up today, and I'm just adding it to my poem as the days go by. And I think they have about 100,000 people who've liked that Facebook page, so you all can go and look to see what's blowing up too. So, how am I doing for time? I'll just read this one poem, and then I'll just read a little section to finish off from my memoir. So I told you I had a long poem about the Bakken oil field, about the oil boom, and this is the last of it's a big five-section poem, and this is the very last section of it. It's called Lament. And I explain fracking, but I won't read that part of the poem to you. It's, it has a lot of scientific words in it. But this is Lament, and it has an epigraph from John Prine. He says, it's a song of his, it's, you got gold, gold inside of you. North Dakota, I'm worried about you. The companies you keep, all these new friends. North Dakota, beyond the boom, beyond the extraction of resources, do you really think they care what becomes of you? North Dakota, you used to be the shy one, enchanted secret land loved by only a few. North Dakota, when I traveled away and told people I belonged to you, North Dakota, your name rolled awkwardly from your tongues, a mouthful of rocks, the name of a foreign country. North Dakota, you were the blushing wallflower, natural beauty, nearly invisible, always on the periphery. North Dakota, the least visited state in the Union. Now everyone knows your name, North Dakota. The blogs, all the papers are talking about you, even 60 Minutes. I'm collecting your clippings, North Dakota. The pictures of you from space, the flare-ups in your northern corner like an exploding supernova, a massive city where no city exists, a giant red blight upon the land. And those puncture wounds, North Dakota, take care of yourself. The injection sites, I've seen them on the maps. Thousands of active wells, one every 2 miles. All your indicators are up, North Dakota. 18 billion barrels, some estimates, more oil than we have water to extract, more oil than we have air to burn. North Dakota, you could run the table right now. You could write your own ticket. So how can I tell you this, North Dakota? Your politicians are co-opted or cowards or bought out or honest and thwarted. They're lowering the tax rate for the oil companies. They're greasing the wheel that needs no greasing. They're practically giving the water away. North Dakota, dear sleeping beauty, please wake up. They have opened you up and said, come in, take everything. What will become of your sacred places? What will become of the prairie dog, the wolf, the wild horses, the eagle, the meadowlark, the fox, the elk, the pronghorn sheep, the rare mountain lion, the roads, the air, the topsoil, your people? What will become of the water? North Dakota, who will ever be able to live with you once this is all over? I'm speaking to you now as one wildcat girl to another. Be careful, North Dakota. So maybe I'll stop reading there and just end with a couple songs. And I think we do have some questions. Hopefully someone has some questions. Between whiskers and oil, I mean, we have so much to talk about, right? So I'll move over here. Can you hear me okay? Is that okay? Good. So usually, the way I write songs is I have a poem that doesn't work. It seems to fail as a poem. And then I'll try it as a song. That goes back to, Voltaire apparently said, anything too stupid to be said must be sung. Did you ever hear that? Such a great quote, I think. So this is a song called Nothing Other Than the Wind. Places I have not been, and all the places I no longer am are near, same in number. I am of an age where the river I was sailing on has turned into an ocean, and I am cut loose, drifting far from either shore. Doomsayer mother, you were right to tell me everything that could go wrong has. Dreamweaver father, I have woven sails of the things you tried so hard not to teach me. I have found my way to somewhere I do not know. I have found the wind that blows me, the wind that blows us through our days to be nothing other than the wind. Doomsayer mother, you were right to tell me everything that could go wrong has. Dreamweaver father, I have wove and sails of the things you tried so hard not to teach me. I have found myself alone in the middle, drifting far from home, and on my way to somewhere I do not know. I have found the wind that blows me, the wind that blows us through our days to be nothing other than the wind, nothing other than the wind. That's nothing other than the wind. And this is, I'll just play this last one and then we'll see if you have any questions. And my friend Joanne, she was from North Carolina. She moved to Ames to work in the USDA lab, and she and I used to hang out. And she really wanted a boyfriend really bad. It's like all she would ever talk about. We'd go out together and, oh, why are the men here so unfriendly? I really want a boyfriend. And you know how frustrating that is? You want to talk about the environment. You want to talk about literature. All she wants to do is talk about the fact she doesn't have a boyfriend, you know. So then she gets a boyfriend. And then she was like, I can't stand it. He's everywhere. Sorry about that. So I wrote this poem. I wrote this song called Big Love. And it's kind of silly, but I'll play it. Someone's in the kitchen, he's rattling pots and pans, got the fryers going on the radio, mixing up the medicine, making something nasty. Someone's in the bathroom, he's showering, toweling off, got the water going on the radio, singing pop tunes at the top of his lungs. But you live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone for a long time. You live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone. You live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone for a long time. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when big love comes looking for you? Comes looking for you. Someone's in the bedroom, he's sleeping, snoring loud, got the TV on the radio, dreaming about his next big invention. Someone's in the bathroom, he's showering, toweling off, got the water going on the radio, singing hip-hop tunes at the top of his lungs. But you live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone for a long time. You live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone. You live alone, you live alone. You've been living alone for a long time. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when big love comes looking for you? Comes looking for you. Big love can give you what you want. Big love can give you what you need. He's got a mind of his own, got those places he needs to be. Remember, he once brought you peaches. He once made you homemade bread. You remain ever watchful and hopeful to the end. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Oh, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when big love comes looking for you? Comes looking for you. Someone's in the kitchen, he's rattling pots and pans, got the fryers going, the radio, mixing up the medicine, making something nasty. Silliness. Thank you. Okay, so I'll switch to that microphone, and I hope if you have a couple questions, I'd be happy to talk about anything. You don't even have to go to the microphone if you don't feel like it. I'll rephrase your question. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll speak loud. So I know when you were introduced that they said you had a fascination with fire in your writing, and from the readings you read tonight, also things that go boom.
Yeah.
Why? I guess. What is it about the element that draws you in?
You know, it's such a good question. It's one I'm solving in everything I write, but I have had quite a few experiences with fire, should I say. When I was a kid, I had migraine headaches, and I would, I don't know if anybody else has these, but the aura, what am I doing? The aura where, you know, you're just walking along, having your day, and then all of a sudden I would get this V of light, and I kind of saw that as fire in a way, metaphorically, I suppose. And then I moved into my first apartment, and it had a gas stove, you know, and I had some fires in my younger years too, but one of my big first personal fires was I moved into my apartment, and I was like, I really loved it, you know, I could like eat a peanut butter sandwich at 2 o'clock in the morning and lean back as far as I wanted to on my chair in the kitchen table, you know, and then I had to use the oven eventually, and it was a gas stove, and I had used the burners before, and you just turn the knob and it goes on, but I turned on the oven, and I went to take a shower, and I came back about, 10, 15 minutes later, and the oven was not hot, and that was when I realized, I must have to light the pilot. And, it's kind of like amazing I survived to adulthood, because I was obviously not very smart, but I had one of those boxes of those farmer matches, so I got one of those, and like that, I didn't even get close to the oven. The door was open, and it just, I got kind of a little bit close, and it just went whoosh, like that. And I lost my eyebrows and my eyelashes and everything, even a little peach fuzz. Even that, when I was that young, I had a little peach fuzz. I lost it all. But I remember opening my eyes, like when the fire was just like whoosh, and it was this incredible, there are no words to describe the color. It's this incredible, vibrant, orange and red and, just this magenta. So then so fire always seemed like an important element for me personally, and then of course when I lost everything in a fire, my band lost everything in a truck fire. So that was when I was like, okay, fire, I guess I'm your bitch, Sorry about that. I'm sorry about swearing, but it was sort of like, okay, I'll start listening to you now. Like, what do you have to tell me, fire, And so I've just really tried to listen to fire ever since then, and
Makes sense.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate the question. Yeah, yeah. And fire is an incredible element. I mean, I have a poem in one of my books about the day after when the truck burned, and we went out to see the truck, and it, like imagine amplifier, power amps, 24-channel mixing boards, guitars, a truck, this incredibly big truck. Everything was burned. All that was left was the engine and like the drive shaft of the truck. And oddly, the only other thing that didn't burn was these magnets, these speaker magnets. So there were something like 40 of those spread all throughout the fire site. And they were made of a metal that was too hot to burn, a metal that had a consistency that didn't burn at whatever level the fire, was at. And it really, it was horrifying, of course, but over the years as I've lived with this and thought about it, I've thought, I really want to write things that are that strong, that they'll survive, like those magnets, that they'll survive that incredible destructive force. So it's an element that I fear. Well, and today some people were at my afternoon thing, but the elevator burned down in my hometown when I was a teenager. I swear to God, it had nothing to do with it, though. It did burn down, though, and it was kind of a big event in my hometown. So fires are just, I remember I was raised a Catholic. I remember going to Catholic church and looking at those candles on the altar and sort of crossing my eyes a little bit and just going into that, that sort of state, like, this is so beautiful. Something really, mystical about fire. And let's just light one right now. No, I'm kidding. Really, I swear. I'm not. Anyway, other questions? Thank you. That was such a good question. Yeah. Yeah.
Became such an important figure or symbol as opposed to your hometown or the United States in general? Or
Yeah.
something that became important as fracking, as mining became so destructive,
Mm-hmm.
or as you became a poet, you wanted to figure yourself out more as a North Dakotan?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and one I think I talked about this afternoon to the students who were at the afternoon event. I have this theory that the place you're from imprints itself on you. And Scott Russell Sanders has this great quote. He says, it's the landscape you knew before you retreated into the illusion of your own skin. And he says, you may love the place if you flourish there or hate the place if you floundered there, but love it or hate it, you'll never break free of your home ground. He says, even if you move to the antipodes, you're still going to measure every other place against that first home ground. And of course, there are some people who have multiple home grounds because they migrated, throughout their childhood. But for me, because my great-grandparents were immigrants, they came to North Dakota and took up land claims, and they were very sort of land-hungry, landed people. They were just, this is it, this is where we're staying, we will not be moved. And, my whole theory when I was growing up was, this place is so boring, when can I get out of here, And then I started, tried to leave, but every time, and I traveled, I was a road musician, but the place just kept kind of like pulling on me. And so it's just a part of my identity that I've accepted. I worked it out in my memoir quite a bit, kind of asking that question. So, with the oil boom now, it's a very strange situation because the premise of my memoir, which I ended up, I'm sorry, not reading from, but was, I grew up in a really boring place. It never changed. It was always the same. It was so boring, I couldn't wait to leave. Now, let me give you 300 pages of that, But now the place is changing so dramatically, and I sort of feel this obligation to go back and kind of write a kind of resurrection update of the place. And it's become such an important part, as I said, in the national economy. It's become such an important part of the national economy because of what the oil is allowing us to do and to not have to do in terms of importing oil from other countries. So it's an odd thing, like to grow up in this place that's nowhere, nobody knows about it, and then all of a sudden turn on the news, turn on NPR, and everybody's talking about it all of a sudden. It's very strange. So, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Linda.
I had a question about the music, which I just love. You really play the guitar very, very well, and you sing beautifully. You do. And this is only the second time in 17 years that we've had someone sing their work. We had Curtis Lampkin here, who's a performance poet and spoken word artist. And I wanted to ask you about the music. Did you were a writer before the music came, or was it the other way around? And if you were a writer first, how did the music evolve from the work that you were writing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think because I grew up in this small town in the middle of North Dakota, and we certainly didn't have an art teacher in our school, and the foreign language teacher was having her children during the years that I was in high school, so I didn't have the chance to learn, French or German or anything. And if you're a dreamy, imaginative kid and you're growing up in a rural place, and you have this habit of making metaphors, oh, look, that cloud reminds me of, the Minnesota Vikings or whatever. People will look at you weird, like you're a weird kid. And I often think about this when I go into Poets in the Schools work, because there's room in the schools for kids who are good at athletics and kids who are good at math and science, but kids who are artistic and love art and love literature, they don't have a lot of an opportunity to sort of show what they're good at. But we did have music in my school, because they're never going to get rid of the band, because they need the band for the football games, right? So we had music, and so that was the one thing. I think that music kept that little spark of creativity inside me alive. And then it was, after I went to college, that I started to understand. I was a very naive small-town kid. I went to college, and then I started seeing events like this where a living writer would come and read from his work, and then I realized, oh, okay, I thought, all the books were written, all the writers were dead, and it was just up to us to read those books now, And then when I started seeing living writers, it occurred to me, oh, wow, people are still writing books about things that are happening right now. And then I started looking at my life, and I thought, I got a lot of stuff to write about. There's a lot going on. And that was the dawning of awareness about that I could begin to try to make literature, which was a long, slow road for me. I was just a naive kid, but I think young people, maybe it's more obvious to young people now that, they see creation all around them. So maybe that's a good part of the way, life is now. But I think it does take something, inside you to feel bold enough to say, something in my life is worth writing about. I've got this thing I know that nobody else has I've never seen it in any poem or in any book, or somebody said something to me, and it's completely unique, and I'm going to try to put it in a piece of writing. And so that's kind of how it worked for me. And so the music and the writing always work together. When I get sick of writing, I go work on some songs and back and forth. So, thanks. Any other questions? Well, I just want to thank you so much, and I hate to release you out into this blizzard, but this is what's going to happen now, isn't it? Maybe it's stopped. Maybe it's stopped now. So thank you so much, everybody. And if you didn't get your question in, please come talk to me. I'd love to talk to you. Okay. Thank you.